Welcome back to another episode of Awareness to Action Enneagram podcast. My name is Creek, and I'm with my Paka co-hosts, María, Sikora, and María José Munita. This is British slang, apparently.
Mm-hmm. And what is it? Say it again.
Paka? I believe
Paka.
I'm saying that correctly.
Okay.
Right. It means...
I'll trust that you are, since I have no idea what it is.
It means genuine, excellent. So very appropriate for the topic at hand, I think. So
You wish.
So, all right. So, genuine and excellent are two different things. So, it means both of them?
this is what the internet says. So
Oh, okay. But not like genuinely excellent then. So, but two separate concepts.
apparently the word origin is Punjabi and Hindi from the early 17th
Wow.
century.
Okay.
So, doing a Paka
huge
job.
connection. Huge connection between India and
Yeah.
England. So, the reason I asked, in Philadelphia, there's a word, John, that people use for everything, right? I mean, it just, whenever anything can be a John, right? You can use it to refer to a sandwich, a person, a baseball game, whatever. It's just this weird thing that people will stick it in, and you know what people are talking about, even though they're not using the word. So, I'm always curious about words that mean more than one thing.
That's
in that way.
interesting. That's very interesting.
Not that interesting, but we can move on.
Okay. Then why are you
He's just
talking
trying
about
to
it?
avoid talking about force.
Yeah. His least favorite number.
No, that's not true. That's not true. It's one of my
One of my least favorites.
But let me put it this way: it's one of the ones that are most foreign to me, and I think this is important
He's
for
talking
us
about
to.
him.
Of course, yeah.
He's one of his least favorite, not
Well,
yours.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm going to say what I was going to say anyway.
Say what you're going to say.
I think it is important for us, and we've talked about this before, to acknowledge our biases and our assumptions about people of different types. And I don't have a bias against fours, but it is a type that I viscerally understand the least. Yeah, from a...
How do you react when you viscerally understand the least?
Well, I should say that I get it the least, right? I mean, just from an internal perspective, there are some of them that make less sense to me in a real way than others, and I think we can all say the same thing, right? I mean, if we assume we know what it's really like to be a 1 or a 2 or a 3 when it's not our type, we're fooling ourselves. But some of them we kind of get more than others. And I will say that the 4 is one just from a personal perspective. I intellectually get it. I understand 4s, but I don't feel that understanding.
It's
as
harder
much as
to
I can say.
resonate with the logic of the 4.
For me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'll let the two of you carry the rest of the conversation, because I got nothing to say.
yeah.
It's not true.
We'll see about that.
María José, what does it feel like for striving to feel unique?
Well, we should ask you, Creek. How does it feel?
No,
like?
I want the official awareness to action definition, not just my flowery version. So my individualistic version.
Yeah. So when you're
I'm
trying
so
to
bored already. I'm just so bored.
no bias at all. No bias.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, so 4s are striving to feel unique, and it is almost, there's this ambivalence between I truly feel that I'm different, and when challenged about that, it's like I want to feel different. So it's kind of both things. It's different from the rest of the people, and 4s in an attempt to see how different they are or how unique, compare themselves to other people. And it's kind of, who am I? It's identity is a big thing. So 4s will see or define my identity by comparing themselves to others around them most times. So identity is a big thing, and there's a lot of introspection as well, because it's, if I want to feel unique, and we need to go back to the logic, if I want to feel unique, how do I know if I'm unique? So I am constantly searching inside as well, not just comparing myself, but inside, like, who am I? What does this say about me? And things like that. I can resonate with that a bit, but it always goes back to usually feeling perfect, but it's like a resource that I have. But for fours, it's their world.
Yeah.
I think it's important to talk about the distinction between different and unique. Okay, so different is comparative, unique is not, right? Something that is one of one, it just is. It doesn't have to express its differences. It doesn't have to highlight its differences. It doesn't have to demonstrate its differences. It just is what it is. And when fours are at their best, that's what they're doing. They're just being who they are. They're not trying to differentiate. Okay, and that's an important thing. And where the four runs into trouble is when they're striving to feel unique, meaning that I don't quite feel it, so I have to try and recapture that. And the way I do that is by drawing distinctions, like Maria Jose was saying. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not this. And that is kind of where the four gets into trouble, when they have to start demonstrating their distinction, their difference, rather than just being unique.
Yeah. I mean, how do you describe the ineffable? It's just I'm a mystery wrapped in an enigma. I mean, what can I say?
Yeah. Well, see, there you go, striving to feel different.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
But, you know, again, I mean, I started off by talking about how this is one that I resonate with the least, or understand the least. But we all understand what it's like to not feel understood, to feel like we are different from other people, to wrestle with our own individuation as we go through life. So we all experience this to some extent. But it's just like with all of these strategies, for the four, the reason we call people fours is because this is the one that is kind of at the crux of what they're wrestling with and how they're engaging with the world. But why don't you tell us more, Creek, and I won't interrupt you this time, about what it's like to be a four.
I think from a day-to-day, there's a, for better or for worse, there's a curation to everything that I do, whether it's, just creating moments and places and things that are beautiful and meaningful. Sometimes it's overdone. Sometimes it's just like, no, this is just what makes me happy. It makes me happy to go on a sunset walk every evening. There's multiple reasons why I do that, but one of them is just I love looking at beauty, and I love honestly contemplating another day closer to death. Like there's a not to be dramatic, but it brings okay. It brings me a sense of gratitude when I think about death, or like when I'm at my parents' house, I'm like, I'm gonna miss this someday, and so it kind of infuses the moment with more gratitude and meaning, and yeah, when I go work somewhere, I want it to feel good. I want the coffee to taste good. I want it to look good. So it's just kind of, I like surrounding myself with meaning and beauty, I guess, is how I would describe that.
And what is the dark side of that? Because what you're describing is the positive side of that, right? I mean, it's the whole idea behind the memento mori, right? Where we think about the moment of our death and give perspective and gratitude for what we are experiencing. And I think as part of every wisdom tradition or spiritual path, there is kind of a death work element where we come to terms with the transience of this experience, and therefore it brings us, gratitude and contentment in the moment. What's it look like on the downside?
The obsession, it goes from curating to control, where if I don't have these things, if I'm not able to curate my environment in a way that is pleasing to me, then I get into a mood, and I can't function because it's not as I want it to be. It becomes then start creating dramatic experiences, or whether internally or externally, writing stories that aren't necessarily true to just make me feel something. So it's a really, my imagination is very strong, and I just have to be really careful where I apply it and how I apply it.
Yeah. There's go ahead, María.
That you said, so for all of the types, it's the same thing. We're striving to feel a particular way, and that distinction between striving to be and striving to feel, you can say or think whatever, but when you don't feel unique, it's when you start acting out, and that's important because it's very subjective, and only you know, and it's kind of a trigger point. Just the distinction between those two things.
Yeah. There's that great Johnny Cash cover of "Hurt," the Trent Reznor song, and I think it's the opening line where he says, "I hurt myself today to see if I still feel." Right. I mean, that video is just a masterclass in forness, right? And highly recommend it for people to find on YouTube if they haven't seen it. Yeah. But it is that I need to, the pain reminds me that I'm still here, right? Which, again, is the bleaker version of what we're talking about, but it's what happens when nothing else seems to be working.
And that in whether physical self-harm or emotional self-harm, there's a level of control there that I'm able to, when I feel like I'm feeling emotions that are not what I chose, sometimes the way that I deal with that is to choose hard emotions that I can choose. So I can beat up on myself instead of feeling the external pain that I can't control. So there's as long as I'm in control of what I'm feeling, then it doesn't really matter whether it's positive or negative in my head. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, kind of.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know what all of those words mean.
Oh man, strange world.
All right, so let's talk about coaching for us.
Well, connecting points. We're supposed to talk about connecting points here.
Yeah. Okay.
So Mario.
So how do you experience Greek?
Oh boy.
The connecting point in summary, in short. The connecting points to 1 and 2.
Well, I was reading Dostoevsky the other day, and
oh boy. Oh Lord.
So 1. I mean, you probably heard a little bit of that in the curation of I want it to be how I want it to be. And if it's not that way, then something needs to change. I remember walking the streets of Europe trying to find a cafe to get some work done because the cafe that I did find had closed, and I kept walking different directions and look, no, that's not a good idea. Well, maybe no. And then I saw a Starbucks. I'm like, it's time to put down my curation and just go get some work done. Bite the bullet. So that's kind of the one sort of thing. I have a lot of opinions and principles that I live by that I hold very dear. The two.
So do you expect other people to live by those principles, or?
I don't get why they don't, but I mean.
How about yourself?
How about myself? What?
Do you live by those principles?
As much as I can. Not always, of course. Yeah, some things are not curated, and those things are embarrassing. But yeah, so the two, my form of need, like striving to feel connected, is the acknowledgement of my specialness. And that's how I feel connected, is like, okay, they actually do understand me and they do see me, and therefore I can be in relationship with them. And so I'll do a lot of extra stuff in order for them to see my exceptionality. And that, again, great gift, because I can read people well and find really unique ways to make them feel cared for. And then sometimes it just is quite overbearing and frustrating for people, and I become needy on some level. But we don't want to talk about that.
It's really, really easy to fall into the trap of thinking that fours are not going to be business people, and you're not going to see them in corporations and running companies and all that sort of stuff, because of the way they're so often talked about and the way they're prioritized, right? But it is important to understand that they're there, right? I mean, lots of fours have 9-to-5 jobs, or start businesses, or run businesses, etc. And, the way I see that one connection coming out, and it's really interesting. So, I did the Riso Hudson training back in the mid-90s. And back then they would talk about these connecting points as, for the four, one was the direction of integration, and they, kind of rejected that and didn't go there. And I was going through the program with a four who I became friendly with. And, at one point he said to me, it was actually a couple of years later, and I had kind of moved on to thinking about these a little bit differently, right? That it's more the Sandra Matry approach, where, we do both directions in good ways and bad ways. And he started talking about this thing that he had noticed in himself about how demanding he could be, right? And how rigid he could be around his expectations. And that's what we often see in the four, that, I don't want rules put onto me because I'm special, I'm unique, I need to be creative, I need to have the flexibility to color outside the lines, but you better do it my way. You better appreciate the way I see it. You better share my vision, or else we can't work together. Right? My favorite example of this was Steve Jobs. Right? If you read the book Jobs by Walter Isaacson, which is a great biography and very thorough, it's reading the narrative of a transmitting four. And Jobs was famously demanding, right? I mean, famously particular about things. And that's not what we think about fours very often. We often overlook that very particular, sometimes rigid side to them. And it's a way that they get themselves in trouble very often.
So what are the strengths and challenges that you all find as coaching fours, especially in business?
Well, there's a lot of strengths. A lot of. I'll touch on that and let you talk about the negative stuff, María José.
You're great at that.
Look, fours are often innovators, right? Fours often have vision. They're often creators. They often want to bring something into the world. So they're often inspired to have an impact when they are motivated, when they feel like things are going the way they should be, like things are working. They can be real forces of nature and really get a lot done and, be quite accomplished. This idea that they sit around moping all the time, wearing black and smoking clove cigarettes is just not my experience of, most of the fours I encounter.
Just every other Thursday.
Yeah, right. They can be very productive, very accomplished people. So their ability to see things a little bit differently than other people do, I find, is their greatest strength.
One of my favorite.
The negative?
I was just gonna.
Well, Maria Jose, you might even have other strengths to point out.
Go ahead, Creek.
I was just gonna say. This over the weekend, we did like a. What was it, like 9 to 6 podcast recording with another podcast that I'm working on, and this kind of speaks to navigating as well. But I was able to bring together a bunch of my favorite creative people to pull off this project, and the juice that I got from that, to watch all these brilliant creative people that I respect collaborate. One of them is the Transmitting Four, and you were talking about like really accomplished creators. He works for a boutique stair company, and they went to this show in Las Vegas, and he designed every square inch of like an 80-foot by 30-foot box that had like these shadow boxes, kind of like little scenes like of doll houses of all the different stairs, and like so you get a snapshot of the house. And like he said, people would through the multiple days of the convention would just come back and just bask in the box, and it's just wild what he comes up with, and I just think it's awesome.
Yeah, and again, that's the brilliance that some fours have. I think it's also important to point out that not every four is that kind of creative.
Yeah,
right? They often bring a unique perspective to things, but they can be in fairly mundane jobs, right? HR, business partners, attorneys, engineers, all these sort of things. So they often do regular jobs as well. But you will see this tendency to put their own touch on something, even the most mundane of things. I remember having a client who he was a engineering vice president years ago, and I go into his office for a meeting, and he's opening up this box, and he's just so excited, and and he reaches in and he pulls out this desk lamp, okay? And, here he was in a corporate office park kind of office with fluorescent lights and things, and he brought in this very, it was nothing bizarre or weird or unusual or something, but it was an elegant sort of, nice lamp. And he was just so thrilled to have this lamp in his office when everybody else had these fluorescent lights that they were, having to live with. So again, it can be something small, but that still very much was an expression of his preserving four tendencies.
Yeah, when I was listening to Creek and the description of his friend's or this guy's work, and he was just kind of shining, and Mario and I were just like, yeah. Sure,
okay,
and
good. Yeah.
and it's pretty really cool, but yeah, probably we're missing some visuals, or I don't know, but I think that it reflects also the low side of the four when they might become dispirited or frustrated when their dream is not shared. So when you don't see the same thing that I'm seeing, it's like they might become resentful and not understand why that happens, especially when they're in leadership positions. So it's like it almost becomes personal. If you don't share my vision, you don't see me, and you don't like me.
Yeah.
So that's a weakness. Well, let's keep going. Let's keep going on those weaknesses.
You've got that wound open.
Yeah,
let's pour some salt in
Let's
it.
do it. Come on.
Well,
Yeah,
so
something very kind of practical is trying to make things different just for the sake of making them different. It's like sometimes there's value in making something unique or different from other things that have been done. But sometimes just using or doing the same thing over and over works. And trying to change that, forcing the change, it's just a waste of resources. And force can fall into that, like making it different because it needs to feel different, needs to feel like a new expression of things when it might be ineffective or inefficient.
Yeah. We all go off track, and we all go off track in our own ways. And this is what the Enneagram is. It's a map of the different ways that we go off track. So don't want to make this sound like, fours are, not as good or not as effective because of this. We're just talking about the ways, particular ways in which they go off track. And one of the things that I see is this tendency to make things different can slow things down, right? Something can be good enough, but while everybody else is ready to move on, the four might be saying, well, I don't know, I'm just not feeling this. Maybe there's a better way, or maybe if we did it this way, sort of thing. Okay. Now, again, ones can slow things down because it's not perfect, and eights can slow things down. I'm not sure how eights slow things down, but by breaking everything or causing trouble or whatever, right?
No,
but
eight being too impulsive and then having to redo things because
well, there you go.
it wasn't going in the right direction.
Screw
I
you
have
both.
examples
Okay?
about
Just screw
that.
you both.
I have examples about that. So, but we'll keep them for.
Well, no,
type
that's
eight.
good.
Yeah.
So you're right, and that's my point. Okay, so we all have our ways of slowing things down, but with the four, it's again usually because I'm just not feeling this, or it's not resonating with me, or not touching me, or it could be more elegant, or whatever it is.
Yeah, another derailer, potential derailer of fours is their insistence on being right. And as we said with type 1, ones also have that derailer, and so do eights. But I think that in the case of the 4, it's more about, again, kind of being too identified with their opinions and their ideas. And so any resistance feels like you need to be defensive because it's an attack on you. And it's like, too identified. And that doesn't allow them to see things more objectively.
Yeah. Fours also can fall into needing to process their feelings about something, right? Which, okay, that's all well and good. But again, at the workplace, that often is a distraction and slows things down and is not really relevant to what the group is trying to accomplish. Right? So these are just things they want to watch out for.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that what we call the blind spot is self-absorption, and I think that is probably one of the things that might frustrate people around them the most, because it's what we've talked about before, like comparing themselves. And sometimes with some fours, every story becomes something to do with themselves. It's like I tell a story and the four might say, but yeah, for me it was a lot worse, and you have no idea what happened to me, and those kind of things, and being sensitive about those things, it sometimes makes it difficult for people to kind of be around them, because they need to kind of watch out for things they say. Look, I lived with a 4 for many years, and it was like walking on eggshells, and you had to be really careful with what you said, because they might feel offended or touched, or
Mm-hmm.
How do you experience that, Craig?
I
does it happen to you at all?
Push everything down, as a man should. Yeah, I feel like over the years it's become less of an issue. But sure, I'll get my feelings hurt easier than probably the average person, but I've also just learned to move on quicker, and sometimes that works, sometimes that ends up turning into bitterness or some sort of frustration or anger by not addressing the things that annoy me.
I think it's important to point out that the reason they get their feelings hurt more easily than most people is because they're more in touch with their feelings than most people, right? So because they're more aware of their emotional states, they tend to filter things through those emotional states, and so my feelings get hurt. It feels more personal. Whereas if you don't spend a lot of time with your feelings, then your feelings won't be hurt as easily, right? You might see it as a slight disrespect or, whatever from a threat, but it has a different feel to it.
But when everything around you is infused with meaning and identity, then everything, like the smallest critique, feels really personal. Because I put my heart and soul into this, and you just kind of threw it aside. And so it's sure, it's in touch with feelings, but it's also just everything I do needs to mean everything. That's not the healthy version, FYI.
Yeah, no, it's not. And it's an example of that self-absorption that María talked about. It's like, well, this is so incredibly meaningful to me, and you should have known that, or therefore your slight was, even worse. And it's that tendency, again, we all have, but 4s are seeing this through their own lens of what's important and what's not, and they're reacting to other people through their own lens rather than, well, this other person might just not have realized how important that was to me, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the awareness to action growth process, how do you work with 4s in that?
So we didn't talk about drama. And it's kind of...
Have we spoke this day of aught else?
Yeah, well, true. And that's why I was wondering if I wanted to bring it up. But I think it's important to understand that 4s tend to play kind of more dramatic expressions when you're working with them or living with them. But... and it can be that they kind of a dramatic, like emotional explosion, but it can also be like they withdraw, but it's dramatic anyway. So that happens, and that sometimes is not easy to understand or deal with for other people.
Cool.
I'll just go back to, again, the Steve Jobs biography. It's amazing how many times there are these scenes of Jobs not getting what he wants, so he literally starts crying in the boardroom, right? Just pouting and crying and throwing a fit over this. So, again, it is that drama. And what happens, at least in the business world, but in families as well is people start to take the attitude of, here we go again, right? And it becomes kind of like, it's like the negativity that we might see in a 6 of always pointing out the problems. And we say, oh, here goes Chicken Little again, right? And so with the 4, it becomes, here we go with the drama again. And people end up missing their signals. I mean, people end up missing what's valuable inside of that drama. And which kind of leads us to the awareness to action process, right? Because that, the emotion behind the drama or the intensity behind the drama is not really the problem. It's the framing and the narrative of how we express it that leads to the dysfunctional behavior.
Maladaptive?
Yeah, maladaptive, sure. In this case, dysfunctional.
What's an what's an example of turning drama into something useful?
Why did you have to pick that one?
You brought it up.
Well, yeah. When we're doing the awareness to action process, we're always looking at what is our narrative about something and how do we rewrite it and how do we get this thing that we actually want. So the 4 wants to be able to better express their uniqueness or better feel unique. And so when they fall into these fits of drama, it's helpful to step back, to take a deep breath, to say, okay, what is happening here? Right? What am I experiencing? To sort of step back into that observer role and let the emotion express itself, but without so much attachment to whatever it is that's causing the drama. So, okay, and then kind of analyze it, right? So it's, I'm not getting this thing that I want that's causing me to react this way. The problem is getting lost in all of the drama. It's being blown out of proportion. So let me sit back and look at this and say, okay, what's really going on here? In what way am I blowing this out of proportion? In what way am I letting my emotions take me off track? And as we start to observe it from the outside, we start thinking of better strategies to get what we want. But it's the emotion that points us, in this case, to that thing that we want. So it's really just a matter of stepping back from it, not rejecting it, not trying to not feel it, but having this other part of us that's saying, this is interesting, what's really happening here, and how can I reframe this to get what I want?
Yeah, one of the other things, or derailers we mentioned, is like this need to make things different. And it's like when we all decide what to do next, we're thinking about the short term. And for 4s, like every single thing can be an opportunity to feel unique. If I try to do that, I will spend more time on things that maybe don't require that much time. So is it really unique if I'm not finishing things, or I'm not taking on projects that could give me an even higher opportunity to, bigger opportunity to feel unique? So with 4s, you can talk about like how do you really want to feel unique? Is it in every single thing? Or do you want to just do some things as you always do them and spend more time trying to make it unique in particular things and have the time to do so? So that's one thing. There are other ways, because if you're trying too hard to make it unique, you might rub people the wrong way or take too long and not finish it. Does that really feel unique? Is that the uniqueness that I'm aiming at? So you can redefine uniqueness, or you can select where you want to feel unique, that you really have an opportunity for it, and leave the other things as they are and not waste time on them.
There's a drive for intentional expression rather than forced expression and automatic expression. And one of the things that I'm fond of pointing out to fours is how often their attempts to express their uniqueness fall into a stereotypical pattern of other people trying to express their uniqueness. Right? There was a great situation a couple of years back where a hipster barista in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, was suing a internet company or something for using a picture of him on their website or a brochure or something like that. And as they get to court, they find out that it's actually not him, right? That it's just another Williamsburg barista hipster, but they all look alike, you know. I mean, they all, kind of wear the same clothes and, the same beard and the same beanie and all that sort of thing. So this need to differentiate by taking on this look was just kind of taking on the look that every other barista in Williamsburg was taking on. So it helps to evaluate, am I really doing this is this a genuine expression of my uniqueness, or is it fitting into some perception of uniqueness, which is really just another form of conformity? And when you get the four asking that question of themselves, then the decisions they make tend to be better about how I'm going to express this uniqueness. So, but I think often that embarrassment of being just like every other four is enough to wake the four up.
But there is something, I mean, with navigating four, like there is something to like, I'm part of this unique group.
Yeah.
So it's not always, I think I lost the, no one can be like me narrative a while ago because it's exhausting. And so I just find, and then also the question of like, just be who you are. Terrifying question, overwhelming question.
Who am I?
Who am I? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. So I guess just a note for the coaches out there that just asking that question doesn't necessarily solve the problem. There's going to be some process.
I'm not
after
saying
that.
it solves the problem. No, I'm not suggesting it solves the problem. What I'm saying is it frames the situation for more intentional exploration of the issue, right? Because until we, as with everything else, until we recognize what trap we're falling into, we can't resolve the situation that's leading us into that trap. So, I mean, that's not magically just going to make everybody say, oh, okay, great, I'm fixed now, right? No, that's the start.
Yeah, absolutely. So final thing, the accelerators for point 4, Maria Jose.
So the accelerator for point 4 is disidentification, which I think solves most of the problems of type 4. Now, I think it's a really powerful one because many of the reactions of the 4 have to do with being too identified with their work, with their thoughts, with their feelings, or with who I don't want to be, or what person who I don't want to be like. And when becoming unique, as Mario said, goes from I'm unique because I'm just unique, it's no reason why I should think that I'm not unique, to I need to be different or from other people, then I'm identified. I don't want to be like them, but I'm dependent, relying on who they are to decide who I want to be. So letting go, which is a kind of lifetime kind of journey of, or at least identifying when I'm too identified with something or someone, it's really crucial because things become less dramatic, less intense. It's less of an issue. If I'm not, if people don't like my idea, it's not like they don't like me. It's just an idea I have, and I can let it go, and I'm the same person. and I'm the person who lets ideas go. So I can reframe that, but I need to see how identified I am with different things around me and in me that trigger some of the worst things that in type 4.
If people are listeners, they know I'm not a fan of just kind of awareness being the solution, right? And with this accelerator, it can seem kind of passive that way, right? So when we talk about, for example, at point 9, the accelerator being generativity, right? So that's actually taking a step to help people. At point 3, it's establishing a purpose statement or something. And then we're saying, well, point 4, just recognize your tendency to compare. You don't really have to do anything, but that alert recognition of a specific issue is an action in and of itself, right? So it's not necessarily more passive than some of the other accelerators we'll talk about. It's just seeing that tendency to compare and contrast ourselves and just saying, I'm doing it again. And then just let it go. And it's easier said than done, but the more often we identify it and the better we get at spotting it, the easier it is to let go. So that's the action of naming it when it's happening.
All right. Well, thanks, folks, for tuning in. We'll see you next episode.